Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Miss Xiao here. I'm going to do a short recording today with regards to completing the square. Let me do a screen share first. Okay, let's take a look at completing the square. It is taught in Secondary 3, Elementary Mathematics, as well as in Additional Mathematics, although most teachers who teach it in E-Maths do not necessarily repeat the same lesson in A-Maths. So anyway, let's dive into that. Solve for x minus x squared plus 4 equals to 0 by completing the square. Okay, so one thing to take note when you are doing such questions is always to rearrange the terms according to ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. So let's rearrange it first. Now, next, what we need to do is we need to make sure that the coefficient of the x squared term is 1. So what we could do is we could multiply every single term in this equation by -1, and we can reverse the sign. All right, and after doing so, we can then complete the square. When we complete the square, what we are trying to do is, with the first two terms here, we're trying to force this into a square. Like for example, what we have learned in Secondary 2 is a plus b whole thing square. And when we do so, we expand it to become a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. And another form is a minus b whole thing square, where we will expand it to be a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. So with the first two terms, x squared plus minus x, we change this into a square by, okay, so let's see, the first term x squared, okay, when you put this into a square, use x as it is. Now, whether we want to consider as an a plus b whole thing square or a minus b whole thing square when we complete the square, consider the second term, the symbol in the second term. The sign says negative. So if the sign says negative, we'll go with a minus b squared. Let's say in the case where the sign of in the second term is positive, we'll go with a plus b squared. So in this case, it's minus. Okay, and the second term that's in the bracket is actually half that of the term in the equation. Okay, because if, when we expand it out, we have a minus 2ab. If we were to work backwards to find this term here, it's actually minus b. So you have to halve this second term to find what this value of b is. So coefficient of negative x is 1, minus 1. Half of it is actually minus half. And we square it. Now, when we do this, write it this way, what happens is that we have created a square, right? So what exactly is in this square? Let's try to unpack it. When we expand it, we have x squared minus x plus half holding bracket square. Interestingly, you notice that the first two terms actually coincide with the first two terms in the equation. But forcing it into a square actually creates a third term, which is half whole thing square. So what do we need to do, okay, to this entire square term such that it gives us the same value as x squared minus x? Since we have inevitably created a third term, we have to subtract this third term that we have created. Okay, so perhaps to make it clear, what I could do is this whole thing over here is exactly the same as the first two terms in the equation. Now, what are we left with for the equation? You have minus 4 equals to 0. So that is what we are going to fill up the rest of the equation with. All right. So back at this point, everything clear? Okay, we're halfway there already. So what we could do next is all the terms without the x, we could bring it to the right-hand side. So x minus half, whole thing square on the left, whereas everything else is on the right-hand side. Okay, and this would give us 4 1/4. Next step, you realize left-hand side, we have a square term. We could square root both sides. So when we square root both sides, we will have x minus half. And the right-hand side, we will have a plus minus square root 4 1/4. And following it, we put x as the subject, and we bring minus half over to the right-hand side. We're almost there. Now, at this point, we punch in the numbers on the right-hand side into the calculator, and we will get two answers. So x will be either 2.56 or minus 1.56, corrected to 3 significant figures. That's the answer to the question. Now we're going to move on to the next question. So we solve for 3x squared plus 4x plus 1 equals to 1, I'm sorry. Now, same as the previous question, we need to make sure that it's in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. So 3x squared plus 4x minus 1 equals to 0. Secondly, we ensure that the coefficient of the x squared term is 1. So we divide every term in this equation by 3. Okay, next we are ready to complete the square. So take note that the second term has a plus. Okay, so we have to consider a plus b squared. So x plus, now the b is actually half of the second term. So we 4 out of 6. And in doing so, remember we have created a third term that is not wanted in the equation. We take this term away. Okay, and everything else we copy down. Okay, now let me just simplify what we have so far. Looking at 4 out of 6, yeah, I'm not so comfortable leaving it that way. Let's put it as 2/3. It's always easy to work with smaller numbers, so we have less chances of having a careless mistake. Okay, now here, the the values that have no unknowns, all these, I'm going to move it to the right hand side. Okay, so this is the one. I'm going to move it to the right hand side. So left hand side is just left with x plus 2/3 square. Okay, and this will give us 7 out of 9. Similar to the previous question, at this point, we will take square root on both sides. Plus minus square root 7 out of 9. In fact, I think on the left-hand side, we could leave out the brackets, not necessary anymore. We make x the subject on the left-hand side. So we bring 2/3 over to the right-hand side. It becomes minus 2/3. Okay, and last step, what we could do is we punch in the numbers into the calculator and we will have 0.215 and negative 1.55. Correct to 3 significant figures. So I hope that these two examples will give you a clearer idea of completing the square. Thanks for your time.